Listen up, Delvers, because we have an extra treat for you today, as this is the first pre-recorded interview segment of the Doctors of Doom Fantasy Football Podcast. Let's all hope this goes according to plan, shall we? I am your host, Alex the Shark Sparks, and we are joined by a very special guest and friend of the pod. Please give a warm dungeon welcome to Miles the Prodigy Black. Miles, welcome, my friend. Say hello to all your screaming fans out there in Radioland.
Yeah, I have fans. I hope it's for the right reasons.
I hope so too. So yeah, you listen to the pod, and you do know that we refer to you as the wild card. And just for clarity to everyone listening, that's not because we think these picks are bad. It's just Miles is one of the people who is most likely to make an unexpected pick and keep us on our toes and like shakes up the draft. This year, you and I drafted right next to each other at picks 10 and 11 respectively. So I'm actually really interested to get your take on the draft as well as the strategy you had going into it, because you and I had access to pretty much the exact same player pool the entire time, other than when we sniped each other, of course. Still a little mad about Ibuka. We'll get to that. But yeah, I'd love to get your take on it. So we'll just go ahead and dive right in. Miles, first we're just going to go through the actual draft itself, and then afterwards we'll like go over your team and how you felt about it. So going into the draft, did you have any particular strategy drafting in the back half of the draft as you were, or were you just kind of going to let it fall? Like, did you have anything in mind going into it, or were you just open to whatever?
First and foremost, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love listening to the podcast, so thank you for all that.
Yeah, man, thanks for being here.
Excited to go into year, 21? 20 for me, since I didn't have the first year, but just to be a part of it for the last 2 decades. One of these years I'll win it, I promise. So to answer your first question, what was my strategy? With the second half of the draft, because everyone wanted to be in the top half, for whoever your top 5 or top 8, whoever it was in your board, that's where everyone had like a drop off. So for me, being in the back half again, I just had to all right, I have a strategy for my first 4, but it's based upon how I think others will draft in our league, based on history or what's the vibes and any information possibly. So for me, I had a strategy. My cutoff was Jonathan Taylor or Kyron Williams. That's with the very end of my tail for running backs who I wanted, because in me historically, I generally go running back, or running back quarterback.
Yeah.
This is, if you look at my last decade of drafting, I think the only other time I didn't draft a quarterback or running back first round was like maybe Rob Gronkowski.
I was going to bring that up. One of the reasons we call you the wild card is you're one of the ones who takes like early tight ends sometimes, I feel like.
Yeah, because my fascination for Gronkowski, but also getting that extreme value at tight end and compared to other positions, like that drop off to me in this last year, just seeing what Kelsey has done, Mark Andrews his 1 year that's done. It's just like if you have that position, which everyone's the debate, Brock Bowers, if that is significant, is that worth taking enough? And that was a consideration. But for me, I was aiming for either Jonathan Taylor or Kyron Williams as my first pick, and then going with quarterback the second round. That was my draft, but looking how it played out, I was completely thrown off by Cameron, and I was completely thrown off by Luis. So yes, I am a wild card for that reason, because I like to be making my decisions where I feel like, all right, if I'm going to win with this, I feel like this is the decision I made. Last year, I went running back, and the whole thing is I always pick a running back too early, aka Gibbs. But regardless, I felt like in that year, those were 2 top 5 running backs. Kyron did finish 5th for me, and then I can just get one wide receiver and then just get a quarterback where I want. Well, obviously, my number 1 wide receiver was a dud, and last year was painful because I had studly depth at running backs, and this year, it just threw me off that Cameron, maybe also Luis, and then potentially even Adam, taking a running back. Everyone took running backs except for Matt, which was not what I was planning on. I know you stated before in your previous podcast, winners typically take running backs first round because of the value on that. I just felt like there was a top 8 with 5 running backs and obviously 3 wide receivers, and I would just be like, all right, just adapt whatever has fallen to me, because I would assume someone would take Jefferson or Lamb. But I'm sitting here dumbfounded. I'm like, oh crap, because I didn't have Josh Jacobs as high as you did. I thought like that was the cutoff before, so I was like, I can't really pass up on Lamb or Jefferson. And I was just going in my head like, am I really taking a wide receiver with my first pick? Which I don't think I can ever remember the last wide receiver I did do that in the first round.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So you mentioned the research I did. The thing about drafting running back first round, I didn't know that either. I just happened to do that research for that episode a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh wow, because running back is what wins it every time. But I mean, that's more of just running backs in general are good in this league, not necessarily. If you get the right person, you get the right person. It's kind of like. But last year, because that put me in the little conundrum because I picked right after you. because CeeDee Lamb was actually my top wide receiver going into this year. I have him rated at the highest wide receiver. He and Chase are very close, but I like CD just because I had him on my team last year without Dak Prescott, and he was still so good. I can't imagine how good he's going to be when he has Dak back, especially now that their defense has gotten worse. But yeah, unlike you, I did have Josh Jacobs. I actually had Jacobs higher than Taylor and Williams, which I know is different from a lot of people, but that's just how I had him. Now, I did like Taylor and Williams. If one of them was there, I'd be in the same situation, but I think there's a pretty steep drop for me from Josh Jacobs to the next tier of running back. And so I was in a situation where if I did try to take CeeDee Lamb here, then there's a chance Sylvie take Jacobs. And I did ask her, by the way, she would have taken Jacobs, and I do not like HN. So I would have been in a bad situation. So I'm happy with the decision that I made. But you and I both, I feel like we're kind of in the same boat, because if you look at the timers, you and I had two of the longest picks in round one. Everyone else kind of snapping off the round one pick. But like you said, I think a lot of the people that we considered top guys were gone by our pick. And so we kind of had to adjust on the fly, so to speak. The
reason why I took a little bit of extra time this year than I normally do is because I had a draft board where I literally was clicking off who drafted where. So anytime it was right before me, I'd check it off, and then I would just double check, like, all right, what's my board? What do I value? And then, like, there was some rounds where I was thrown off by Luis, and not by you. It was just like, damn, you made me feel bad in a couple picks because, for instance, like round 3, I'm here with a quarterback setting off the quarterback run, which I wasn't anticipating. I thought either Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen would be taken. Well, at least I thought one quarterback would go before me, and I would be taking the second quarterback. I was not expecting me to go the first quarterback, nor was I expecting the QB run that happened in the second round. I'm just sitting there like, everyone's taking QBs. I'm like, that means there's going to be some value that the first half draft's going to get, like Vinny getting Chase Brown. Because I was seriously debating, like, do I go Chase Brown here, or do I go Justin Jefferson or Lamb? And I was just like, I don't think Chase Brown, who was next on my list, would be in that same category of the value. Because I was tired of not landing a one wide receiver in my previous years, like Olave bust. Right. I'm always really, in my opinion, like I had Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith, and Jigma picked off the wires last year, and I was rotating between them two and Devontae Smith. It wasn't bad, but he was like a wide receiver 17. So I was constantly going through these like wide receiver 2/waiver wires as my number 2s.
You want a guy that set it and forget it, instead of having to be in a situation where you know one of the guys on your team is going to have a great week, but you don't know which one.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, that's why I was like, I'm like, really? I have to pick between Lamb and Jefferson right now? And I was like, on my board, I had Lamb was higher. Lamb, even before the Micah Parsons things was late, so I'm like, man, like, he's higher. But the reason why I chose Jefferson is just because I have some sort of allegiance with him with prior years in my other leagues. And this is the only league I haven't won yet. It's like, man, I got to win it with Jefferson. I don't see a far discrepancy, obviously, on my board between Jefferson and Lamb. I know with Micah Parsons gone, it makes it even worse. But I felt like, what do you call it? What's his name? Jamar Chase. I felt like he was on a tier of his own, and then Jefferson, Puka, JJ, and CeeDee Lamb were on like that next tier right there. And I was like, man.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I think personally I have CD and Jamar Chase on a tier above, just because they don't have injury histories. Every other one of those guys, there is a risk of either them being injured or their quarterback being injured. It just happens so often. Yeah. Whereas I think with CD and Jamar, like, yeah, there's a chance their quarterback gets injured, but even when their quarterback is injured, they still play at a high level. Whereas some of these other guys, like, look at Tyreek Hill last year when Tua was out. Tyreek Hill was
That's why he dropped tremendously. And JJ is always, no matter who the quarterback is, to me, JJ is quarterback proof. It doesn't matter who's injured. He's had Romeo Dobbs, or like what was that not Romeo Dobbs. What was that quarterback that was terrible? He's had Nick Mullins. He's had some bad quarterbacks. Yeah. And then average quarterbacks, I mean, in my opinion, Kirk Cousins, that made Kirk Cousins get paid. So it's just like, if he just gets an average quarterback, like Sam Darnold, to me, was above average. I never really hated on him in the Jets. It's like, he just got to leave, and then he has an amazing year. And I'm like, wow, I mean, like, he had the weapons, he had the O-line, he had the system. If I think J.J. McCarthy is the same as Darnold, or a little bit worse, or a little bit better, I think J.J. is going to have similar numbers. So it just, to me, I just went with loyalty. And also, like, who do I like more as an offense? Who's going to score more points, the Cowboys or the Vikings? It should be the Cowboys based on how bad their defense is, but who do I trust more? I trust the Vikings way more. So I felt like Jefferson was a safer pick. And I was just like, I just got to take him.
Yeah, I mean, for those who listen, I talked about how I would have gone the other way, and that's why I thought that pick was strange to me personally. But But I get it. I mean, if you know, if you feel more confident in Jefferson, totally understand. Me personally, I'm confident with CeeDee Lamb just because of the garbage time. Like, you're right. Minnesota's a better team. There's no question, right? But as someone who had the Dak CeeDee Lamb stack last year, at least temporarily till that got hurt,
That was nice.
their MO is straight up suck for 3 quarters. Oh crap, we're getting blown out. We're going to air it out. And so the fourth quarter is just racking up yards, touchdowns, and points. And so, that I was like, look, there's a world where Jefferson isn't needed to win the game because the Vikings are winning anyway, and he gets you 50 yards. Whereas I don't see any game where the Cowboys are like, oh, we're winning, we don't need to play CeeDee Lamb. Nah, they're going to be running him up and down the court. So that's the court, the field. That's why I went with CD, but fair enough. But yeah, as you mentioned, you started the QB run here, and nobody expected this because I think a lot of people expected QB to be gone before now, which, like you said, someone would have taken one and no one did. And then you started the run, the big four here, in my opinion. A lot of people call it the big five, which ended up going, Jalen Hurts a couple picks later. I'm not as big on him, but fair enough. But yeah, the big five QBs, a big run on quarterbacks in this round. And then, so I guess we'll move. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was super shocked by that because I'm like, I'm gonna be the first one gone, and Joe Burrow is number one on my list this year, and it's just, I know he's not a running quarterback like Josh Allen, Lamar, or Jaden, but in a situation, I'm like,
yeah, I mean, similar to Dak, he's also gonna have to throw it 50 times a game. The difference is he's way better at football.
Yeah, way better at football, like way better, like. That's just like I want to watch Bengals games this year on offense just because they're going to be entertaining, and having Joe Burrow at the threshold, like he's going to be controlling everything. So I'm super excited for those first two picks just because, loyalty. I know JJ is a safe if he, obviously with health, that's for any player, but when he's on with Joe Burrow. I felt like I had a good start, but obviously going wide receiver quarterback puts you at a disadvantage at the most, in my opinion, the most important position is running back. That's why I've always gone running back in our standard leagues. In this scoring league too, like it's just having a top 12, top 8, top 5 running back really, and like your podcast yesterday, having a solid quarterback and a solid running back, if they can score it, you're in a great situation. So that was my nervousness. I didn't know what was going to fall to me in the third or fourth round. It was kind of obvious, like, I have to go running back here.
Yeah, you kind of took a page out of your brother's playbook by going the 0 RB strat. So let's take a look at the RBs you did end up picking up. As you said, 3-4 turn, you were kind of, like you said, priced into having to go running back here, I feel like, with no running backs yet. So you went with Chuba and then later Travion Henderson, which I said on the pod yesterday, I really like both of these picks. What are your thoughts here? Based on what ended up falling to you, are you happy with the decision you made going the 0 RB strat because I mean a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers and such went, so there were more running backs available at the 3-4 turn than I thought there might be. So are you happy with your decision to wait, or?
I kind of like I didn't know how to feel in the moment because again my original strategy obviously is running back got thrown away, so this year I felt like I had to adapt. So what made it to me, I'm like, all right, if I did have to think of the possibilities, like what if which it did, but again, I wasn't planning on it. Like what if I do have to go running backs in the third or fourth round, which historically is not good. But maybe if there's some luck goes my way, which I did get lucky, starting the quarterback run allowed other running backs and wide receivers to fall. And then you had picks, you had a tight end that went, which was the debate, where does Brock Bowers go in our league? Obviously, Ozzy's fell in as a late second, so we'll see if he's a 175 plus, then it's worth it. If he's 120, 130, this pick won't be worth it. But that's the boom bust with tight end, especially when you have Brock Bowers, so it's like a good bet. But regardless, that helped me. So there's a tier of running backs who I wanted after, obviously, if JT and Kyron were gone. I didn't want Jacobs, but I knew he was going to take him before me, so that was off my plates. Achane I like a lot, but with the risk, I knew someone was going to take it before me, so I'm like, all right, he's not going to make it to me, obviously. Obviously, James Cook is going to fall, but not to me, nor Chase Brown, so I'm like, I can't really get those guys. I'm not too big on Bucky, but yeah, he's going to be a really safe pick this year, so obviously he would probably fall. So I was hoping like either 4 running backs would make it to me, Chuba, Hampton, Connor, and Henderson. Those were the 4 that I was hoping that, and I'd get 2 of those guys. Ideally, I was like, all right, I'll go Chuba. If I'm going to go out of those 4, I'm thinking between Connor and Chuba. And This is the first year, by the way, I haven't drafted Cardinal. I did not, by the way. I didn't even draft I'll make a note of that for the defense, which I'll make a comment later.
For those listening that don't know, Miles is a big Cardinal fan.
Yes, and there's always a Cardinal on my team almost every year because I always overhype them. But for rightly so, they do produce fantasy offense. This year, I do think there's going to be value, but for where they were going, that wasn't fitting in my draft. I didn't think Kyler was going to be a top 5 this year, so obviously I wanted a top 5, top 3 quarterback. Obviously with Burrow, that's what I believe, so I'm like, Kyler's not on that list. Versus last year, I really thought Daniels and Kyler could have been top 5. Daniels did that. Kyler didn't, but there was weeks where I didn't start the right one, so I was like, damn, there's like 4 wins I could have gained. That was the difference. But anyways, I like making those decisions this year. I was like, my running backs between Connor and Hubbard, like Connor is the heart of the Arizona team, and that team, what was the difference between last year and this year in offense? They got 1 new offensive lineman. That's it. Everything stayed the same, other than the beat reports that Marvin Harrison gained like 15 pounds of muscle, and him and Kyler are working the offseason. So there might be a huge value in Harrison where he's going, versus last year he got overvalued and didn't reach that expectation as being a wide receiver 1. This year he's being drafted as a late wide receiver 2, potentially a 1, based upon Kyler Murray said it best. I need to learn from Lamar Jackson when to run more. If Kyler Murray shows up and wants to be MVP, he's shown that he's being a top 5 quarterback, but he's too volatile for me. So for me, with James Conner being that way, like, are they going to have similar years where they're just going to run the ball with James Conner? That makes James Conner a more sexy option. But he's 1 year older, and he's been hyping up Trey Benson, and the offense has stated, James Conner is the man, but long term, I felt Hubbard was the safer and better pick.
Yeah, I like your Hubbard pick too. I also had these guys kind of rated similarly. I had Hubbard and Hampton above Connor as well. But the issue with Connor for me is, like, he's been great when he plays. The problem is he's played 8 NFL seasons. He has played a full NFL season 0 times. So you know going in if you draft now he hasn't missed extensive time. I will give him that. He only ever misses like 4 games a season. But like, you still know going into things, if you take Connor, I'm going to miss out on my running back 1 for a quarter of the season. So I feel like because you were in a situation where you went the 0 RB strat, you needed the guys you picked here to at least stay on the field. Because if you miss here, you're in trouble. So I think you made the right call with Chuba, and then I ended up, had you taken Hampton, I would have taken Chuba over Connor as well. So
that makes me feel a little bit better, because I was thinking, okay, no one's going to take Hampton. I think people were going to go either Connor. I thought maybe Henderson, or someone was going to go like maybe Breece Hall, but obviously our league's a little bit smarter than that. Other than, sorry, Luis. I was just hoping, because after that, like after Henderson and Hampton, I didn't want anyone else. I don't want Kamara. I don't want Swift. I don't want, like, as much as everyone's praising up Pacheco, I mean, yes, but I kind of don't want him as my number 1. Like Tony Pollard.
I think there's a lot more question marks about all the running backs after. Like, not saying that none of the backs after this can't hit. Like, I really like Tony Pollard this year, for example, based on where he's being drafted. But that I feel like you mentioned, these last 4 guys, like, if you don't get one of these 4 guys, then you are going to be basically just hoping and praying that the guy you pick is the one that hits.
So I'm kind of, again, I got a little lucky with people drafting. I mean, Kittle was gone also before me. Patrick Mahomes, who I felt like was the wrong time to take. You could have got him a round later.
Vinny and I blasted this pick pretty hard on the pod. Mitch liked it. I think he's way off base with that one, but yeah,
I listened to it. I kind of agree with you. And
the
more
Mahomes pick is wild.
I understand where Mitchell's coming from and his logic, but to me, I felt like Cameron could have got that a pick later. Because looking at the next quarterback that went, he could have got it back to on his pick where he picked Tyreek Hill. Like, no one went quarterback. It was the tight ends and wide receivers that people were going for in this round, versus me and someone else who was like going for the second running backs. I was going for 2. So like, I just felt like he just miscalculated that. But other than that, like, Cameron had a good team.
Yeah, you don't want to be at the end of the run. And I mean, like, the run kind of ended a few picks before him with the Jalen Hurts pick, and then he like picks at the end of the run. So even if you think Mahomes is the best of the next tier, which again I don't think most people would have him rated there, which is another thing. Like, you could have gotten Mahomes later just because even though in your mind he's higher, no one else is going to have him there. A guy who has been finishing as the top 12 quarterback over the last 2 seasons isn't a guy that someone's like, oh, let me grab him right away.
I don't see it changing, but it's like that really nice known product name. It's like Apple. It's done so well for a long time. It's great, but you just hasn't seen any improvements in the last time. But nothing's going to change because they're like, oh, I'm Patrick Mahomes. I can do whatever I want, and with Andy Reid, and I feel like they're just going to be the same as the last 2 years, which is fine. They're going to win games. They're going to be competitive. They're going to try to win another Super Bowl, but it's just not for fantasy for me in that spot. So again, I got lucky. I felt like I really got lucky with my 2 picks. I'm happy with my 2 picks. Also, the upside with both of them. I feel like both could finish top 12. Maybe obviously like top 16, but that's all I'm asking for those first 2 picks.
Yeah, I think Chuba Hubbard, like, people really underrate him for some reason.
Don't know why.
Like, he played so well last season. Like, people think of the Panthers and like the Panthers suck, and they do. I'm not saying they don't suck, but if you look at the Panthers last quarter half of the season, they were a good offense. And I know that's weird to say, but they were. And it's like, and what they do in the offseason, they went and added a rookie wide receiver who's getting a ton of hype. So much hype, in fact, they let Adam Thielen, their best wide receiver, go. It's like, clearly this team thinks that they've got something on offense here. And if that's the case, having the starting running back that they just paid, look, you don't pay a running back to bench him. So they went and paid him. The first round rookie that everyone thought was going to take that job that got hurt last year, he's out all season this year too.
Like, that's not good. Yeah, like, that's not good. And Terry, my Arizona boy, I watched a lot of his Arizona games last year because they went to the Big 12. So I was just like, how bad is Arizona going to get smacked in this league? But he was a beast. And the best indicator for wide receivers coming in from the college level to the NFL is touchdowns. So that's like the strongest indicator of like who is actually legit versus who's just kind of using the system of college. And he's right up there. Like, he's a freak of nature. He's going to be a difference maker. The Panthers' offensive line went from horrible to middle of the pack this year based on PFF. So they improved in that point. Their defense improved because they finally got draft picks on that aspect. Panthers are going to be competitive this year. They're not winning their division, but they're going to be competitive. And if you're going to be competitive, you're going to be using a utilization of the number one option, which is still Chuba Hubbard. So I agree with you. Like, I don't understand why there's no love. Maybe it's just a small market and no one sees it. Like, if you played in a larger market, maybe Chuba Hubbard would be drafted higher. But I'll take it because they paid him. I have no fear about Rico Dowell. I'm like, all right, I saw him in Dallas. There's like, Rico Dowell is going to be used in certain unique schemes, Space says, but it's not going to take away Chuba Hubbard, his volume or his potential of being like the guy.
Yeah, Chuba Hubbard is the guy in that offense, and I just think he's not a sexy name, so people like.
No, it's not.
It is why, and that's, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm not going to tell it now. But one of the things we're going to talk about on the pod this week is people who are players that have been disrespected and like drop in drafts for no reason. Like, there's a series of players who always kind of drop in drafts, even though like nothing about their history says they should be dropping. But anyway, let's move on to the next couple of picks here because we do want to get through all this. Look at your team. So next up, you picked up Jameson Williams, which I think is a great value upside pick. I think that's a guy who has potential to be a top. Well, where they have him rated 24. I think he could be a top 20 wide receiver this year, and if he is, that's a steal getting him in the 5th round, considering so many other wide receivers went before him. Followed up with Mason. I think this is the more interesting pick. Now, were you happy about taking Mason? Do you have high hopes for him, or was it because like running back had just dried up, so you had to take something here?
The difference between Mason and Charbonnet for me is these are 2 elite options you want on your team for the upside, because the difference is who's on a more elite offense. Jordan Mason. Right. What he did in replacement for CMC, when I drafted him last year, I had him in every league. Even in one other league where I drafted CMC, I got Jordan Mason in all my leagues last year. And it worked out for the first 6-7 weeks in all my leagues until he got hurt, which is fine. And he came back, he was back in a committee, and then he came back and got hurt again. But he's an elite running back. He's like a top-tier backup running back. The same thing with Charbonnet. Those were the 2 I was looking at who I wanted to take as my 3rd running back, because eventually Kenneth Walker's going to get hurt. I don't want Kenneth Walker in any of my leagues. And just because that O-line didn't get better, I don't have optimism about Seattle's offense this year, even with the new offensive line change and the new coordinators that came in, the Cougs. None of that, like, to me, I don't see them as a sexy option this year versus Minnesota's option. Yeah, like, Aaron Jones is going to get hurt eventually. By week 6 or 7, Jordan Mason is going to be relevant, if not valuable, to me for my situation. I guess more so the question would be, were you hoping that like a Bill Krosky, a Tyrone Taylor, a Caleb Johnson had fallen, or like were you not really looking at those guys and were going to be on Mason regardless? I I was looking just because how the draft went out. I knew running back was what I needed to value more than wide receivers because in this particular league, picking up a wide receiver 2 is very easy in my opinion. So I just needed to land one of them, but getting a good running back, especially with our waiver wires, like it's kind of luck of who loses first, and you get the priority of running backs, the value that may last.
I've talked about on the pod. One of the reasons Matt has been so successful is because he is. And this is going to sound like I'm making fun of him. Look, he's got 5 championships. No. I'm not. But he comes out of the draft with such, like, teams with holes in them. Like, he finds stars. I guess stars and duds is kind of how he drafts his team. Yes. And so, because he's got some stars but some duds, he doesn't do well out of the gate, which allows him to pick the best players up off waivers. So he goes from stars and duds to stars and stars.
So for me, I don't like that philosophy. I know he's been successful, but to me, if you look at the history of our league, there hasn't been any division winner with a losing record. There's only been twice, and I've looked at this. There's only 2 times a person that's gone 500 and won their division. So statistically, you have to be 4-2, 5-1, or 6-0 in your division to make the playoffs, and you can't have a slow. Like I don't want to start 1-3, 1-4. I want to be 3-1, 4-1, so I have at least 2 or 3 division wins starting off, and then I could just try to go 500 in the middle of the years because it's so random based on schedule, like who has bye weeks, what. And with our positions, we don't have an extra flex, so it's like those bye weeks matter even more. So to me, I've always tried to win my first 3 and last 3 games just to guarantee myself in there, and then it's a crapshoot. Like if you have the best quarterback or best position at wide receiver, running back that can help you lead, and they win those last 2 weeks, you win a Super Bowl. I was close a couple years of Todd Gurley in my running back, but it's just, it's just, I like the strategy, but I'm so in favor of just winning your first 3 weeks, no matter what cost it is.
No, for sure. So, but yeah, I guess the question was, had one of these 3 guys fallen, Johnson, Tracy, or JCM? Because I mean, all the and Jordan Mason, all these guys are kind of in a not a committee situation, but a situation where there could be 1 of 2 guys who could be the lead, but like.
I haven't answered. Well, I like Mason out of those 3 because Krosky, I don't know the level of trust with Kingsbury in that offense. Who doesn't say that Eckler doesn't get all the important touches and Krosky's there as like an explosive back for certain situations. You're hoping that Eckler gets hurt for him to be relevant. Tyrone Tracy had good numbers last year, but on a bad offense, so they're force-feeding him than no one else. That new rookie that came in, the guy that I drafted, Scadaboo, has been nothing but praises out of camp. And it's one of the situations that he's technically a better athlete than Tyrone Tracy. So it might be by a committee just because of how talented Scadaboo is once he comes back from health. So those picks kind of made me nervous. Like, I don't want a guy who lose his job. I want a guy like Jordan Mason who could win the job, in my opinion, versus Aaron Jones. Like,
yeah, I believe that's kind of the same decision I had to make here when I took Baker, because I was considering Tracy here, but then I also looked at JCM and I was like, honestly, Sylvie's not taking both of them. I can just get my quarterback, and I'll take whichever one she doesn't take, because then I don't have to make that decision. And so, I'm kind of happy. You know, like you said, this is the guy whose needle's moving up in camp. This is the guy who's, I wouldn't say his needle's moving down, but it's more so that Camp Scadaboo is moving up, and by Scadaboo moving up, by default, that means Tracy's moving down.
If you were to ask me to rank that round, I would put Jordan Mason, Zach Charbonnet, McCroskey, Tracy in that order, who I wanted. So for me, it was like, I was like, it's either Shaq, Charbonnet, or Mason. It just came down to who had more confidence in the system. And I picked Minnesota's offense.
Fair enough. All right, let's move down here. This is the one. Oh, man, Miles, we were on good terms until this happened. I have been so hyped about Emeka Egbuka all preseason, even when we did our rookie show weeks and weeks ago. And this isn't, as you know, this isn't a Dynasty League, so we don't talk about rookies a lot. When we did our rookie show, I talked about how much I thought he was going to be one of the most impactful rookies this year outside of Genti, because like that's an obvious one. Like, I was big on Emeka Egbuka, and because I had taken Baker in the previous round, I'm like, I'm going for the stack here. I talked about this off air. I had a chance to take Mike Evans when I took Hampton. Same situation. I had, Hampton and Connor were both available. I knew Sylvie wouldn't take both. I considered taking Evans and letting both of them, like, just getting whichever one she didn't take. But I was like, actually, I want Egbuka so bad. I don't want to have Evans and Egbuka on the same team and end up like Brake, who has both Rams receivers as starters. So I didn't. And then you took him one pick in front of me, and it broke my spirit. I got to tell you, that pick hurt me bad. Go ahead. Let's hear about these 2 picks, Egbuka, and then also Tyler Warren, which I think is a big upside pick. We also both took tight ends here, so you're not kind of copycatting each other. Wide receiver, tight end.
So I feel slightly bad. There's a little bit of empathy because I had in the back of my mind like everyone obviously wants to go for the stack that they think is relevant for their team. And like you, I was extremely high on Ibuka. One of my favorite fantasy football casts that I listen to, the Fantasy Football, they were very high on them. And based on the beat reports that are coming out of camp, like Baker Mayfield and the entire offense had nothing but high praises for this guy. Mike Evans had high praise. He's already acting like a professional. Chris Godwin, even though he's on the sideline, had high praise. Like he's better than the other guy. What's the third guy that they had last year, who was actually really good. Urales, I forgot his name. They have another wide receiver, so they're stacked on wide receivers at this team. They have two tight ends, Kate Auden, who's obviously the pass catching one, but they have another fantastic blocking one who occasionally will catch the ball. But that team is just stacked on offense, and having Ibuka rise to kind of like a lucky situation where Chris Godwin isn't where he is without the payment. Ibuka would probably be drafting much later, and you'd be holding on to him, waiting for him to get wide receiver 3 options. He's going to start the gate out as wide receiver number 2, and he could be the rookie of the year.
He's wide receiver number 2 with the quarterback who has led the league in touchdowns 2 years in a row.
If
I get that people like are down on Baker because like he started his career didn't start great, but that's because he started his career with the Browns and the Panthers. Yeah, these aren't good football teams. Like look at what happens when someone leaves those teams. You know who else was on the Panthers for a stint? Sam Darnold. How did he do last year when he got in a good football team? So you put Baker on. This is an explosive Brett Favre-esque player. I'm not saying he's Brett Favre. He is not. But he's a Brett Favre-esque player. He's a gunslinger. You give a gunslinger a bunch of weapons, and he's going to put up points. He's going to turn the ball over, but he's going to put up points. It's kind of like when Jameson Winston was down there, right? Like he put up a ton of fantasy points. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Miles.
I think Baker Mayfield's a fantastic pick. The only difference from last year this year, I don't think he's going to get as many points only because of the rushing yards. But everything else, he's going to do the same. Everyone's like, no, he's going to regress in touchdowns. Like, bullshit. Baker Mayfield's going to get the same amount of touchdowns, maybe throw more yards, but he's not going to get like 450 rushing yards. He had like 4 or 6 plays where he had like 60-yard rush yards, or like, not 60, but he had like insane 1-yard run where he was getting like 20 plus off the game script. He's just really smart on when to scramble, but he's not a scrambler. So he's going to get on average probably 150 to 200, at most 250, not 450 like he got last year. So if you minus those rushing yard points, but you take everything the same, it's the only regression in my opinion, Baker Mayfield. So he is a top 8 quarterback, if not potential top 5 if he throws for more yardage. And he has the weapons. Like he has Bucky Irving where he does the lot quick out. He's just a smart quarterback. And you're right. He is just in the right system. He's talented. He's got the arm. He makes those dangerous plays where no other quarterbacks can throw. He's so fun to watch on offense. Like I'm so happy for him to be in that situation. And who is he's praising? He's praising this rookie. This rookie could be, if you minus the quarterbacks like Cam Ward or other rookie quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy, whatever. If you take out quarterbacks, he could be the rookie of the year, even over Alshon Gentry. Like that's how talented and how high I had him on my board. But he was going in like the 6th, 7th, 8th round. In our league, he got pushed down because obviously of other prioritizations. So for you, I knew you're going to probably want to stack either Evans or that just based on the draft. How I didn't think you were going to go quarterback. So it's like, who is Alex going to take that's going to be around me that'd be available? He's probably going to go Baker or Dak. Those are the two I thought you were going to go.
100%. Yeah, I probably would have gone Dak later in the draft, but Vinny actually took Dak before I even took Baker. And so, because these are the two guys I was targeting. If round 1 broke differently, there's a world where I take Lamar Jackson at the start of round 2. But because of the way round 1 went, and I was able to get a stud running back, I didn't need to do the 0 RB strat like you ended up doing. So, like I said, you and I were 1 pick apart. We might have done different strategies. But yeah, because Dak went here, I was like, I'm just going to take him. But still, I ended up getting Baker at the end of the 5th round, whereas all the other QBs were 2nd and 3rd. And he's the guy that was QB3 last year. Even if he does drop down to QB7, like I think the value's great there. And yeah, so I really did want the Ibuka stack. I mean, like you said, this is the guy that. This is an offense that was a top offense in football 2 years in a row that already had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and they still used their 1st-round draft pick on a wide receiver, and their quarterback is praising the rookie wideout in camp. That doesn't happen. Think about how many times quarterbacks badmouth rookie wide receivers or talk about how, they're learning, they're coming along. No. They're just straight up saying good things about him. That's that's different. I mean, look, it's all talk until we see it on the field, but I'm hopeful for this guy. So I hope he does really well for you, but mainly because the Baker's throwing to him and he's on my team, not because I want you to do well.
So you and I have a vested interest together. Maybe so I'll take it. But it was like either him or like what? Like I was thinking potentially tight end, but I valued Ibuka more than the tight end position because who I wanted was Warren. And I was like, thank you for taking Njoku. Everyone's going to praise that pick over, and rightfully so. Joe Flacco with Njoku, the stats there versus Tyler Warren and Danny Dimes, Danny Stanky Legs, I call him because he can't run. But I'm super hyped on Tyler Warren.
So full disclosure, I actually had Warren higher on my board before the draft than Njoku, but the report had come out, about the trade, so that Joe Flacco pretty much has the job locked up until one of the rookies is ready, and the rookies aren't ready. So last year, or what was it, 2 years ago, when Flacco was on the team, he and Njoku had really great chemistry, and Njoku played really well. And there was a picture from a preseason game where Njoku and Flacco are listening to music together on the bench. These guys are that's going to be his favorite target, I feel like.
It is. It's going to be his favorite target.
So as long as Flacco can keep his job, I love this pick. Now, once Flacco loses his job, I'm probably going to be dropping Njoku, but that's not a knock on Njoku. It also depends on who he loses it to, right? Because if he loses his job to Sanders is a passer, right? So I'm fine with that. If he loses it to Dylan Gabriel, then anyway. But so that's why I ended up making this pick, even though I had Warren ranked higher. I ended up going with Njoku just because of who his quarterback is.
Yeah, and that's the smarter one. I had Tyler Warren higher on my list, even with the. I told Mitchell, I'm like, guess who's going to be. This is like a month ago. It's like, guess who's going to be the starter for Cleveland? And he said, no, it's not going to be Flacco. And I was like, no, it's going to be Flacco. The team needs to win now. I don't
100%.
care.
We had that same argument on the pod. Mitch was like, no. He didn't think Flacco was going to make the team. I was like, dude, Flacco's going to be their starter. I don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly, because unfortunately, Flacco's their best quarterback right now. But regardless, that means Judy, that means Tillman, that means, I guess, Ford. But most importantly, Njoku is going to be fantasy relevant. So I felt like this was a fantastic pick for you. I was going to go Njoku if you went Warren. Regardless, I was going to go one of those two just because this was the time. In a standard league, I don't want Kraft or Engram. In a half PPR or PPR league, maybe I considered Kraft over Njoku and Engram because Engram's going to get 10 targets.
Yeah,
somehow.
Engram's going to be the target hog.
For 8 yards, but you're hoping for a goal line touchdown, which you don't want in this league. You want the potential of a guy who's going to consistently get 67 yards with a touchdown. That's Tyler Warren, in my opinion. I think Tyler Warren is going to get 60, 70 yards each week. It's just a matter of when he's going to get a touchdown. He's that elite. He's that gifted as a player. He's a freak of athlete. He's a nightmare matchup. And I hope this offense with Danny Dimes and JT, with Josh Downs, who's still available on waivers.
I was going to comment on that, right? So, I think one of the reasons that Warren has such potential this year is Josh Downs is a deep threat outside wide receiver. That has never been Danny Dimes' wheelhouse when it comes to throwing the football. Danny Dimes doesn't throw those routes. He throws the kind of routes that Tyler Warren runs. So that's why I think there's a lot of value in Tyler Warren, because it doesn't matter how good Josh Downs is. There's just not a matchup. There's kind of the argument about DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers. Those two players can both be good, but they don't play the same style of football, so they're not going to work well together, in my opinion.
Let me ask you this then. Danny Stinky Leg was always with a bottom 5 O-line. Always. This year he goes to Indianapolis, and apparently Mitchell was right on this one. There was never a competition at quarterback, so it was always going to be Danny Jones getting the job. I was like, all right, I guess you really have no faith in Anthony Richards. So that means values. Now he actually has a line with the time to pass. He's always had arm strength. Maybe not the accuracy, but he's always had arm strength. Wouldn't that be at least a little bit more opportunities for Josh Downs to be a low-end wide receiver too at points? Because
look, for sure, there is absolutely a world where Josh Downs or even Michael Pittman, who got drafted in the same area, this is a guy who used to be a good football player. There's a world where one of those guys becomes fantasy relevant, right? If Danny Dimes can pass, but it's a different team, and we have talked about, hey, when you move from a bad team to a good team, you get better. But the difference is the Giants have had Eli Manning had some bad football teams and still put up numbers.
True.
He threw a lot of picks, but he put up a ton of yards and touchdowns. No, he is. I mean, he was a good quarterback. But the point that I'm making is Danny Dimes didn't do that. So that's where he had one good season that got himself paid, and then he never had to get another one again. So we'll see. But no, to the point that we're both making, I do like the Warren pick. I think more so than the wide receivers, this is more his style, more his comfort zone of throwing to the tight end. So I think it's going to work out well for you. Moving right along, because I do want to... Oh, go ahead, Miles.
The only one that I was considering, which Austin took, was Travis Hunter. Like, when is Travis Hunter going to go? But in a standard league, I'm worried about him. In the IDB league, he went like in the early second round because you can have him as either a DB.
Yeah, in a league where you're allowed to start him as a cornerback and get wide receiver points. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like, this is like the difference of draft between our league, even in a full PPR league where he's going to get targets on offense and wide receiver. So I feel like that could be a potential home run hitter for Austin. I was considering that, but like I can't miss on my tight end at this round. I didn't want the other options. And I didn't think. So yeah, sorry, continue.
No, you're good. No, I don't want the episode to take forever but yeah, I do want to get to your team before we have to wrap this up. But yeah, so Cam Scadoo, we already talked about him. Yeah. Ravens D, I don't think there's a lot to talk about a defense unless you just want to. Let's see, what else did you go here?
I was trying to target the Cardinals defense, but I thought defenses normally go with like round 8, round 9. I like round 10 defenses, that middle of the pack defense where it start to go. Ravens to me were the top tier, not one on my list, but like top tier 3. Like my top tier of the top 3 defenses.
Gotcha. Yeah.
There's just like there's no way I'm passing on the Ravens right now.
For sure.
First, I think the Cardinals spent a lot of draft capital. They weren't bad last year. They have a favorable schedule this year, so they're going to want to run the ball and play defense a lot. So that means potential for turnovers. In this league, for defenses, you want teams that create turnovers. So pick the defenses that always get the best on turnovers, because who cares about the yards and points against? Like, yeah, those points are nice, but statistically, there are teams that do the best, like those abnormally years where Vinny had, the Patriots defense, or I forgot.
They scored a touchdown a week. Yeah, that was insane.
Yeah, it's just like that's a difference maker. You want touch, and Ravens are that. So
yeah, you want the guarantee points, because like you said, like it's real easy to, because even the defense can play great. Like I said, we talked about with the Cowboys earlier, playing against Dak Prescott. The defense can play great and hold the opposing team to only 150 yards and 7 points through 3 quarters, and then they play prevent defense in the fourth, and the team's airing it out, and they end up still getting up 21 points and 400 yards.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all I have to say about the defense. I'm happy with that point.
All right, and here it looks like you backed up your QB with J.J. McCarthy. Or is this your... Yeah, this is your backup. You have Joe Burrow. Is this just because you can only take so many wide receivers and running backs, or do you think there's a chance McCarthy has a good season and this is like an insurance play if something happens to Joe?
Second option. I think J.J. McCarthy, I know you're not as high as him because the system that you ran in college, but all the reports out of Minnesota is like this is the guy they've wanted, even out of that rookie quarterback draft class, and they got him. He just got hurt last year, and then Sam Darnold was supposed to be the veteran that helped him and stepped in and had an amazing year.
All the reports I've heard out of Minnesota are about how good that backup quarterback did, which is why he made the team. He was supposed to be 4th string and he ended up being 2nd string, but yeah, I get what you're saying, but yeah.
Okay, so fair enough. But so this year, if I'm in agreement that nothing has changed on this offense, they've gotten better with the quarterback upgrade. Regardless of what that upgrade, if you think of Darnold is to J.D. McCarthy, if there's a slight upgrade, then that means that this is a value pick that I can have on my bench as a guarantee, just in case, Burrow's never stayed healthy, but it's finally the first year where he has entered this league healthy. That's the only difference, but Burrow's never...
He played the preseason for like the first time since his rookie year.
Yeah, exactly. So all pointing signs like J.J. McCarthy can finish top 10, maybe. And obviously with the stack, I have J.J. to J.J. just for that meme, so... There's obviously for that reason too, but no, I messed up on the Jaden Reed pick. I didn't realize this injury was more serious. I probably would have gone maybe like another running back like Trey Benson or Will Shipley in that spot for Jaden Reed. So him is like I need at least a drop player. So he's realistically going to be my drop player if I need someone on the waivers, just because I didn't realize how severe this him. He's got the Des Bryant, the Julio Jones, that injury where they played through like this broken foot, like this. On the top of his foot for the year without getting surgery. So it's like every time you make a cut, you feel this pain, but they can still play through it. Statistically, none of them where they were drafted made for the value. And this was like anywhere from like round 7s to 15, but obviously deeper leagues, deeper benches. But I don't know that's the one pick I'm like, out of all my draft where I wanted people, that's the one where I regret. It's like, I shouldn't have picked Jaden Reed just because the news came out literally the day after. I could have probably stacked Trey Benson on my bench for that one.
All right, and moving on to the next round here. Let's see, kicker. We're not going to talk about that. Keenan Allen. Okay, yeah. So this is a pick I really liked. Keenan Allen 2 years ago as a Charger was great. Last year he was bad, but for those who've ever listened to this podcast, I think Caleb Williams is a trash can fire. So I don't blame last year on Keenan Allen. So
his stats weren't bad though last year.
And again, his stats weren't bad. I just meant like it wasn't like a great fantasy season. No, what I'm saying, right?
It wasn't. It was terrible because again, I agree with you. Caleb Williams is overrated. I'm sorry, Caleb, but
this is his last. So his last year in LA with Herbert, same quarterback, he had 108 catches, 1,250 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Now, I took Ladd McConkey, so I really hope that doesn't happen. Honestly, if Ladd wasn't on my team, I hope it would happen. I've always liked Keenan Allen. I like Justin Herbert. Like, I'd love to see them go off, but because I have Ladd McConkey, I really need him to not be this guy anymore, Miles. I need him to be the guy who gets hurt or, is over the hill or whatever because he is 33, which, as a 41-year-old, that's funny to say. But you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm worried about this because there's a real world where this round 14 pick, which is the last round of our draft, you've gotten a guy who's going to be an RB2 that you can just start him every week.
That's the thing. I was like, that's with our rule. You can only draft 4 and 5 respectively, either one or the other. That means I can go a kicker round earlier, and I've already drafted a backup quarterback because I either want like a young stud or a prospect just in case. For that bench spot, that's like I can draft a running back or wide receiver the last round that would normally fall. I would be taken a little bit earlier. Keenan Allen was on my list. The reason why Ladd McConkey fell tremendously on my board for standard and half PPR, Ladd McConkey is still round 2 player. He's that elite. He gets Herbert open. Herbert clearly is his number 1 when Ladd wasn't there. When Keenan wasn't there. You saw it last year. It's just that last year they didn't have running backs like J.K. One-Leg Dobbins, ran out of fume. Gus Edwards was not it. So they got Najee Harris. They got Hampton. They still have an elite O-line. I think they're going to try to go back to that. And Ladd McConkey's volume is going to go down. So when it comes to touchdown dependent in our league, I'm like, who are they going to go to in the red zone? Keenan Allen. So I'll take him late. And maybe he pans out. Like if Keenan Allen can get 8 to 12 touchdowns, this pick is a keeper. And like, if not, then he's going to be terrible, and I can drop him and then pick up another person. So it's one of those.
I think this may be one of the most valuable picks of the draft because, like you said, if he works out, it's a home run, and if he doesn't work out, who cares? It was your 14th round pick. You can drop him.
Yep. So that's how I viewed with him.
So, all right, let's take a look at your overall team. So now that we've, how'd I go to my team here? Probably under the word my team, Alex. All right, so we looked at the draft, talked about your strategy, talked about the individual picks that you made. So now let's talk about what the overall team looks like put together. At the end of the day, before we talk about the construction of the roster itself, how do you feel about it? Like, if you were to give yourself a grade out of 10, how do you feel you did on the draft overall?
That is the question I'm still thinking about because last year I was so happy with my team because how I felt where I drafted guys and my value. I was like, I got like top 5s in every position almost, other than wide receiver. I got like a top 12 wide receiver that didn't pan out. I didn't even get like a top 2. I was just waiver wiring that, and I had elite running backs, but I just couldn't start the right quarterback, and I had a top 3 tight end. But this year I was just like, am I happy with my team? Like, I love Burrow, yes. I actually do like my running backs, even though I normally don't like going 3rd, 4th running backs and then like trying to pick up not necessarily handcuffs, but potentials like a Mason and Scadaboo. So am I happy there? I finally have a year in this league with Justin Jefferson. I passed him up last year. I took Kyron Williams. I probably would have taken Denver Kennedy. I probably would have taken Gibbs over JJ last year. So it's just like I passed up on JJ. Just felt like this year he was just staring at my face like, don't pass on me this year again. Otherwise, you're going to regret it. So I'm happy with my wide receivers for what I did, which is rare because normally I'm happy with my running backs more than my wide receivers. But this year, I'm way more happier than my wide receivers of what I did, minus the Jaden Reed pick. But again, if we had our draft 2 days later, I probably don't make that pick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jefferson's a set it and forget it kind of guy. If either Abuka or Williams work out, which personally I think they both will, but
or Allen,
or Allen, yeah. If any of those, well, I just think Allen's a longer shot. But I think Abuka and Williams, I think both of them are going to hit, and you just need one of them to hit to be solid at wide receiver. I think your running backs are fine. Like Trayvon Henderson is actually projected to score more than Chuba Hubbard, which CBS's projections are wild. But that's interesting, right? That he's projected to score more than Chuba Hubbard, which we already talked about. We both like him. Joe Burrow, obviously, that was your QB1. I think he would have been one of my top 3 as well. I had Lamar higher just because he's running QB. But
Tyler
yeah,
Warren is fourth on my list on my board, and I was like, he's going either ninth or 10th, and he's fourth on my list behind
behind the
Bowers,
big three.
yeah, and McBride. So he was fourth on my list over Hawkinson. I love Hawkinson this year, but just in terms of how they're going to funnel the ball, I feel like Hawkinson is going to be like a matchup nightmare only, not an every week guy where he's going to get like 60, 70 a week and then you're getting a touchdown. That was McBride last year. McBride was getting you like 80, 90 a week, 60 sometimes, but if you got a touchdown, which he never did, McBride's the number one tight end last year, but he wasn't because he didn't get the touchdowns. If Tyler Warren gets touchdowns in this offense, like if he can get 8, he's going to be a top 4 tight end where I got extreme value. So this is where I'm hoping I differentiate myself from everyone else because I have a better quarterback in my opinion than most of the league. I'm hoping my running backs wash. I'm hoping my wide receivers slightly outperform the other stacks wide receivers because there's a lot of good 1-2s in this league for wide receivers. It's so easy to find a 2 later on the year. So I'm hoping that my 2 does land. But where I'm thinking that I make it break is my tight end position and obviously my running backs going what they need to do where I drafted that. So I'm content with my team. Would I rather have like obviously like, you know, Jonathan Taylor or Kyron Williams right now and then figuring out my other wide receiver situation like I normally do, I'd probably be happier then. But
Yeah,
let's give it a
but
try
that
this
wasn't
year.
an option for you, right? 'Cause based on where you drafted, none of those players were available. So
Yeah, I felt like this year was the year of adapting just as the start. So I'm just going to have to continue to adapt and, win my division as I always try to plan for and just go from there. So I'm overall, I would say out of 10, I'd say a 6, maybe a 7, just because I got the players who I wanted based on a little bit of luck. But I landed my second round pick, which was key. And I'm still happy with, I landed my 8th round pick with Tyler Warren. And then I got some real value in the middle of the draft where I felt like if I didn't get the luck that I needed, maybe I'm like unfortunately starting like Kenneth Walker or DeAndre Swift or some of these other running backs. Like as much as I love RJ Harvey, there's still a risk there with RJ Harvey. Like there's some of these other running backs who I like. I love Tony Pollard for the first 4 weeks, but when Tajay Spears comes back in week 6, like that's the what if. Like where does his value go? So I'm content with my team. So I'm excited. I'm content. It's just not like I was. It wasn't the same as last year. Last year I was much happier. This year I am happy, but I'll have to see the results because this is more of like I could be completely wrong and be like a 4-8 team or 4-10 team or whatever.
yeah, I think the biggest hole in your roster is kicker because he's going to be getting all extra points because Baker's going to throw so many TDs that he'll never get a chance to kick a field goal. All right, one other thing I wanted to talk about with not your team but with you. So this is something that Vinny brought up, and I called you the prodigy in the intro. And the reason for that is, according to Vinny, you always draft players the year before they break out. And I went and looked, and your team from 2023, that could not be more the case. So in 2023, you drafted Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, and Trey McBride. Lamar Jackson in 2023 was QB5 with 364 fantasy points. Last year, QB1 with 496 fantasy points.
Huge difference. Yeah, I know.
Saquon Barkley in 2023, RB13, not even an RB1, with 171 fantasy points. In 2024, RB1, 308 fantasy points, crushed it. And then McBride, tight end 10 with 94 points. 2024 only went up to 127 points, but that was tight end 3. So, yeah, last year you had, 2 years ago, you drafted 3 guys that would be number 1 or number 2, basically, in their position going into the season. So, do you think, given that, who do you think from your team last year has a chance to make a huge break this year based on that? So I'll show you your roster from last year in case you don't remember it here. Give me a second. Is there anyone that you had last year, here we go, that you think is going to make a huge jump this year?
At the start of the year?
Well, just in general, over the course of the season. I mean, because like last year, I think you had some hits as it is, right, with Gibbs and Ladd McConkey as a rookie. So is there anyone you think you took last year that's going to make a big step up this year?
The obvious answer would be Gibbs, just because Gibbs last year with the timeshare of Montgomery and still where he finished, there was weeks where Montgomery was hurt last year. I'm not saying Montgomery's going to get hurt this year again, but I do think Gibbs will get more volume this year, which will solidify him being that value. It's just a matter of the touchdowns in our standard league. Goff is going to be throwing a lot of dump off passes to him, in my opinion. So I feel like in half PPR, Gibbs is like. But in our league, I think the obvious answer is Gibbs. I secretly am going to pick McBride just for the touchdown volume. I think Vinny got a steal there, just because again, if McBride gets touchdowns, and they're not going to force feed it this time, but it comes down to Kyler Murray. It really did. Like if Kyler Murray plays better, Trey McBride, Harrison will increase their volume of touchdowns because those are the 1-2. Nothing changed last year. Michael Wilson's the number 2. He's always a slot guy, and Greg Dortch is the quick out route guy. So unless they book it to the house, who's going to be getting the touchdowns? Either James Conner, Trey Benson, Trey McBride, or Marvin Harrison. And if the offense is going to take a step up, I think the real value is Trey McBride here. So
yeah,
unfortunately,
I mean, catching 100 passes only have catching 100 passes, only 2 of them being touchdowns. I agree with you. I think that's got to go up. That's the number. There's no way he stays at only 2 touchdowns.
yeah, if you get 6 touchdowns, he's tight end 1. So I easily see him being a 10+ touchdown. Like he could be in that elite status with Brock Bowers if the touchdowns come. In our league, like there's weeks where he was getting 10 targets. He was the number 1 tight end on getting first down. So Kyler Murray looks for McBride every third down as number 1 option. And then at a certain point last year, he was just looking for McBride only, just because he was force feeding the ball. This year it's going to be a little different, but yeah, man, I think the Cardinals' offense will be better than last year. They have a more favorable schedule. I think the touchdowns are going to come from him.
All right, Miles. Well, thank you so much for being here, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing us with your thoughts about the draft and your team and how it worked out. One final question. You did watch the pod, so you've seen us break down everyone's team. And you can't pick yourself. So besides your own team, based on what you've seen with the rosters, who do you think has the best chance to go the distance and win it all this year? Who's your pick if you can't pick yourself? I guess I'll phrase it. Who do you think you'll play in the Super Bowl? Let's put it that way. That way, we can still put you in there. But who do you think you're playing in the Super Bowl based on how these teams have broken down?
I was wrong last year. I had Austin's team last year, and he finished dead last.
You were way wrong last year. Let's hope you're better this year about the pick.
If it wasn't me...
If you want, I can go show you the rosters again. I was just trying to do it from here, but
I'm trying to load it up right here, but initially let's see here. Like everyone, like you guys said it best and during the podcast yesterday, like you guys have, like everyone kind of drafted well. Like I wouldn't say.
I think there's only like 1 or 2 teams we gave kind of a bad grade.
Yeah. I either like, if Matt's team, Kyler Murray does pull a top 6 mode where Kyler Murray's averaging 22, 24 points a game, his team, like minus Swift, he's got Montgomery, he's got Davis, like Harris could come, like his team's pretty nice. I like Matt's. I do like Vinny's. I'm a believer in McCaffrey, Brown. I'm a believer in London, but I'm not a believer in Olave or Dunze, Wilson. Obviously with Dak Prescott, if he stays healthy there. I like your team. Minus the Jacobs, but regardless, Jacobs is a safe pick, so being him as a safe 1, low-end RB1, high-end RB2, like your team has very high potential as well with Neighbors because he's such a high-volume guy. Probably of those 3, I'd probably pick Matt just because, no.
I'm fine with that. The guy you picked last year got last, so go ahead and pick Matt. Hope he gets last this year. I'm fine with that.
We'll go with Matt.
All right, great. All right, thanks so much for being here, Miles. Any final thought before we go off the air here?
Nope, I'm excited. Thanks for having me. Looking forward. I felt like every team did well to a certain extent, but not as well as I did, obviously.
Yeah, I think the league is only getting stronger. A lot more parity in the league. I think. It's a far cry from when we started this 20 years ago, and there were people that didn't know anything about football. I mean, Brake's still in the league, but even he made a couple of good picks. So, should be a fun year, and I hope that I see you in the playoffs. And with that, we're out of here. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.